Hi everybody, welcome to this episode of Enlightenment Today. I'm Jason. Today we are going to speak about the seeker's mind and what it means to stay in the process of learning and continually cultivating intelligence. Now, Judy Krishnamurti once said, "There is no end to education. It is not that you read a book, pass an examination, and finish with education. The whole of life, from the moment you are born to the moment you die, is a process of learning." Okay, so learning is something we continually do in our lives. No matter whether we are learning from a book or learning from a particular experience, no matter whether we want to believe it or not, we are constantly learning. You know, even a lot of people, they don't think they are learning, but life is continually teaching us. And Judy's point is that this is the whole process of life, is to continually learn and to cultivate intelligence and to be the best version of ourselves, actually, be an authentic individual. But when we are continually learning, we don't possess what we know as a particular object. A lot of people say that they know something as if they know it, as if they perceive it as a particular object within their mind. And once you begin to become a know-it-all like that, you start to lose your sense of growing and learning. Now, to explain this better, if we look at the Kena Upanishad, it says, "Brahman is unknown to those who know it, and it is known to those who do not know it at all." Now that seems paradoxical, and we are talking about Brahman here, the ultimate reality of the universe, the irreducible essence, the Godhead, if you will. But a lot of people say they know it, like they learned it and they know it as a specific object. But Brahman itself is not an object of knowledge. And once you start to think of something like that as an object of knowledge, then it loses its ability to deepen its understanding within you. And this is the point of learning. When we act as if we know something, then it loses its essence to deepen and go further within ourselves and to come to deeper contemplation and realization of whatever that thing is we're trying to know. So when we think we know something categorically, we become stale and disconnect from our mind's natural growth. Okay, so we lose our sense of our psychological growth when we think that we know something. And I used Brahman as an example before, and you do see a lot of people in spiritual circles and New Age circles saying that they're connected to God and know God and this and that, as if it's a particular object. But cleverly in the East, Brahman is not an object of knowledge, and it's beyond anything we can even think of. So all that can happen is that we can only continue in our spiritual process to try and understand and come to a deeper wisdom of what that is. So when we lose this idea of natural growth, then we essentially become, a know-it-all, and we start to come off as some sort of authority on whatever that may be that you think you know. And we know a lot of these people. We know what it's like to be around a know-it-all. You can say something and they know it better than you do. They come off as this authority, and it can be very difficult. But what they need to realize and what we need to realize is that information is always changing, no matter what you think. Information is constantly changing, and as it constantly changes, knowledge continues to deepen within us as we grow psychologically. Okay, so it continues to deepen and we continue to grow psychologically. We often don't know something categorically, because knowledge is always deepening. We only understand more as we grow. Now, to explain this, think about this, right? You could read a book this year. Now, you could read that same book next year or the year after, and it could mean something completely different to you. You could find things in it that you didn't see the first time. Now, what's changed? Has the book changed, or have you changed? And the truth is, you've changed. You've changed and you've grown, and you've begun to see things within that same book that you only recognize now because your knowledge has gotten deeper within yourself. You have cultivated more intelligence to see the deeper aspects of that book. So that's an example of how we cultivate intelligence. We keep the seeker's mind and we continually deepen our knowledge within ourselves. Not becoming a know-it-all and not becoming stale, and not thinking that we know something categorically, as if information is some sort of stationary object that doesn't continually change. So when you admit you don't know, when you actually admit it, you stay in harmony with the seeker's mind. So you are continually exploring life like a child. You're in a childlike state, exploring life and exploring the majesty and having that natural curiosity about things, that innocent curiosity. That innocence is something that we've lost in the world, where a lot of people think that they know everything. So once you know, when you think you know something, you lose this natural innocence. And you see this natural innocence in a lot of poorer nations. Like in India, when I go to India a lot, there is this natural innocence with rural people. And it's quite breathtaking because they don't pretend they know something. They are always curious, and it's very fun to be around, and that's actually a natural state. That's why sages always say we need to return to our childlike mind, which is the seeker's mind. So we need to stay as a student in this life. We need to continuously learn from life, and we need to remain as the student, not pretending we are a teacher or a guru. And this staying as the student keeps us very humble. We stay at a low place and we continually learn from other people, from books, from just life in general, from experience. Now, the seeker's mind and learning is related to nature. You know, we could use nature as a metaphor for learning, actually, and this exploration of the seeker's mind. Because when we think about nature, nature is always nourishing itself. It's always moving and it's always growing because it's alive. So when we think about learning then, is learning similar to nature in that regard, in nourishing and moving and growing and being alive? Of course. Learning itself is nourishing, it's constantly moving, and it's ever growing. But it's not in the physical sphere, it's within the mind. Learning nourishes our mind, it's always moving within our mind, and it's helping us grow into being the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be, the most authentic being that we can be. So learning itself is alive. So learning nourishes our mind and awakens the faculty of intelligence deep down within us. Now, this faculty of intelligence deep down within us has actually been given a name in the East in Sanskrit, and it's known as Buddhi. Now, Buddhi can mean intellect or it can mean intelligence. There's a lot of debates as what it means. But Buddhi in this regard means intelligence or universal intelligence. And the Sanskrit root of Buddhi is Bud, which means to be awake, to understand, or to know. And ironically, Bud or Buddhi are some of the other roots of Buddha, the actual title for an enlightened master or enlightened teacher. So we have this Buddhi intelligence faculty within us. It's something that we have, but we don't recognize it's there. You know, it's a seed that we have not paid attention to. But you need to think of Buddhi correctly. So when we look at Buddhi, Buddhi contrasts from the mind, manas in Sanskrit, and the ego, ahamkara in Sanskrit. So in Samkhya and classical yogic philosophy, both the mind and the ego are aspects of prakrti. Okay, so prakrti can be languaged as nature, or all of the material universe, including mind, energy, and matter. So the mind and ego, from the Samkhya and yogic philosophy, is part of prakrti. But Buddhi is the faculty to discern and recognize the difference between prakrti and purusha. Okay, so purusha itself is the transcendental self, or the unstained pure awareness that in Samkhya and yogic philosophy is actually separate from prakrti. But Buddhi is the faculty to recognize the difference between these two. So not believing that the mind or the ego is actually our real nature. So it's this heightened sense of intelligence that can discern between truth and falsehood. And this is something that we have lost contact with, this Buddhi. This Buddhi, you could say, this universal intelligence, is a dormant seed awaiting a awaiting nourishment from us. It's just dormant within us. So we need to think of it in that natural sense as well as a seed, because just as our psychosomatic organism needs food to be productive and active, so does our buddhi need the food of learning to cultivate intelligence and be creative. Okay, so that we need to emphasize this aspect of cultivating intelligence. This is what helps the buddhi grow within you, and this is what someone like a Gautama the Buddha or a Patanjali or a Shankara or a Sri Ramana Maharishi had cultivated, was this buddhi within them, which gave them this heightened sense of intelligence. Okay, so we need to cultivate this intelligence. We need to be very careful with it. We can't misuse it, which is what we have done in this world. So to cultivate intelligence, first of all, we have to come back to what I said earlier. We have to stay a student, okay? And now, to stay a student, there are many practices and paths. Obviously, to stay a student, you need to obviously be a humble person, constantly bring your mind back into the present. But to cultivate this intelligence, we need to turn something like as simple as reading into a discipline. Now, a lot of people have a lot of things against reading a lot of books, but if you read books objectively as someone who is just awaiting to learn something new which will contribute to your life, you won't become a know-it-all in that regard. A lot of spiritual teachers actually say a lot of negative things against reading, because in some cases, if you read too much, your mind can become too academic and too intellectual, and things become too black and white, and you lose your sense of beauty and your sense of stepping beyond right and wrong. But if you can use reading as a discipline in the sense of just cultivating intelligence and not sticking to the information you got, but allowing it to nourish your mind and allow you to grow into a more full human being, then it's a great thing. So we need to turn reading into a discipline in this regard. Now, to do that, a lot of people don't read these days. So first of all, to turn it into a discipline, we need to turn the TV off, we need to turn the computer off, we need to turn our smartphones off and disconnect from the internet. So if you're watching me right now, turn me off and grab a book and start to cultivate your intelligence. Find a book that resonates with you deeply and start to read. You don't have to sit here and listen to me, but if you're still here, we'll continue. So we need to understand that when we are continually watching stuff, when we're continually on our smartphone, on the laptop, watching TV, we are constantly suppressing the buddhi, suppressing the intelligence within us. That's why a lot of people assume that we don't live in a very intelligent world, because it's become a very materialistic world, which is materially driven by self-interest, driven by our status in society. And what does this have to do with cultivating intelligence? Absolutely zero. So all of this watching, constantly, this screen world that we've become addicted to is suppressing the buddhi, suppressing the intelligence. So we have this sort of zombified state in the world, which is depicted in a lot of television programs and movies. And the irony is that we have this zombified state in the world among most people, and those very people are constantly complaining about their lives, complaining about the political situation in nations, complaining about religious problems, complaining about their life in general, but they're not doing anything to cultivate their own intelligence, to step out of this and to grow. How can you complain about a particular political situation or a particular political leader being elected if you yourself are not making the changes subtly in your own life? If you yourself are continually just watching the news like this instead of cultivating your intelligence and reaching higher states of consciousness, you cannot say one word about anything in the world, and that's the truth. So zoning out, watching TV and being confused on your smartphone, this is just making us stupid, okay? And we're losing out. I have a lot of friends who say they can't even pay attention for 2 minutes on a book. they pick up their phone straight away. And for me, who doesn't have an active phone, I cannot understand. So this zoning out is continually making us stupid. So think about it right now. Are you engaged with me right now? Are you here with me right now? Or are you drifting off? Are you thinking about what you need to do? Are you thinking about what you're going to say to this person when you see them next? Or are you here present with me right now? You know, these are things we have to think about. How do we cultivate intelligence? We have to be far more present instead of letting our mind drift off and zone out. So, as I said, a lot of people find it hard to focus on reading a book because they've become so accustomed to screens. But you need to understand that reading requires an ability of focus and concentration for extended periods of time. It just requires that. And actually the benefit of this, of reading for extended periods of time and accessing that ability to focus and concentrate, is actually a beautiful practice, because when you practice extensive reading, it actually cultivates focus and concentration. So if you train yourself, okay, every day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read for 3 hours. What this does, even if your mind is drifting off but you're continually bringing it back to the book, is you are continually cultivating focus and concentration. Now, this focus and concentration, when you're continually bringing your mind back to the book and training yourself to be there present with the book, this goes not just from the book, but this ability to focus and concentrate begins to be applied in all areas of life. This is, you might, for example, be a painter and you find it hard to concentrate, but if you're practicing reading a lot as a discipline, when you go back to painting, you might find yourself being able to concentrate and focus on your painting for longer periods of time. This is the significance of training yourself to read for longer periods of time. Ask yourself this: do you spend more time on your smartphone than you do reading a book every day? If the answer is yes, then you have to reevaluate your own life. Okay. I try to read at least 2 to 3 hours a day, if not more, with my schedule with writing books and so forth and so on. But I make an effort to bring my mind back to that present moment of objectively learning from someone that I admit that I don't know anything about. So I'm remaining as a student in that process. So are you spending more time on the TV and on the phone and on the internet than you are reading? You have to really ask yourself that question, because we need to cultivate this ability to focus and concentrate for extended periods of time. Or if you don't, then you'll be on your deathbed when you're older and you'll wonder what the hell happened in your life, because you spent most of your life unconscious, zoned out, watching TV, even zoned out in everyday life. So my advice to you would be to buy a bookshelf and to fill it up. Now, don't fill it up with fiction, fill it up with non-fiction, fill it up with stuff that you can really learn from and you can grow from. Fill it up with nourishing material. So fill it up with, I would suggest, a lot of Eastern thought, wisdom or perennial philosophy, or maybe something about your diet, something about nutrition, books that you can learn from that can help you grow. But at the same time, don't become a know-it-all. This is, like I said, this is why the gurus and the spiritual teachers often, they speak negatively about reading, because this is the fine line. You can become a know-it-all. Oh, I know that because I read it here. But you only know something deeply when it's become a part of your life and you have integrated it as part of your being and you are actually living it. Then you don't need to talk about it, do you? So the fine line is between becoming a know-it-all and staying a student. Now, obviously we want to be this one. We want to be always remaining as the student, which allows us to stay humble in life and continually grow and cultivate intelligence. So remember, what you think you know right now will most likely deepen within you in the future. Okay? Everything deepens, like I mentioned with the book. So learning is growing, and if you are growing, then you are alive. So learning is growing and you are alive. This is the paradox. So the feeling of being alive is accessed when we are learning. When you feel like you're alive, it's always been because you are learning and you are growing, and it's contributed to your inner being in some way. But when we aren't learning, what happens? We stagnate. We become stale. We become rigid. You know, we often know the people who say, oh, he hasn't changed for 10 years. What a great guy. When I hear that, I think, what a tragedy. He hasn't changed in 10 years. He hasn't learned. He hasn't grown. He hasn't become the best version of himself. You know, we are here to grow and to learn and to become alive. When you haven't changed in 10 years or 1 year or 1 day, then you have become stagnant, you've become stale, and you have lost the ability to grow and learn. And you may be a know-it-all. But if you choose to cultivate intelligence, to focus on the seed of the Buddhi, then anything is possible. I'll leave you with this quote from Mahatma Gandhi, which encapsulates this whole episode. Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Thank you for watching today. Hey everybody, thank you for watching this episode of Enlightenment Today. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, please subscribe to my YouTube channel right here. Also, to watch some of my previous episodes of Enlightenment Today, click down here, okay? So thank you for watching, and let's continue to learn, grow, and love more together.